Hi there, and thanks so much for joining me for another video. I'm Erin Eno, and today we're going to have fun painting this really simple two-color abstract floral. If you do enjoy this video, please be sure to hit the like button, and also to see more tutorials like this one, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's just jump in and get painting. Today I'll be using my Baohong Academy cold press watercolor paper. It's 140 pound, 100% cotton. My sheet size is roughly 7.5 by 9.5. I've got my Royal Talons Van Gogh paints, a jar of water, and a paper towel, and I will be using, I believe, 3 brushes today. I have my Curry's size 12 round in their 2500 series, and also a size 2 round in their 2500 series. I don't know if I'll be needing that, but I just want it on hand. And I've got their 2400 series in a size 6 round. So there's 2 things we're going to be doing with this painting that are going to make it kind of pop a bit. One will be your choice of colors. So we want 2 contrasting colors. I'm going to be using black, and for my contrasting color, I'm going to be using a bright orange. You can pick any bright kind of vibrant color. I'm using Permanent Red Light, which is fairly orange, but to make it just a little bit brighter, I'm going to be adding some Permanent Lemon Yellow. Of course, if you have a really bright orange, you won't need, whoops, I did not mean to do that. I just totally contaminated my pink. Sorry. So as I was saying, if you have a bright orange, you obviously won't need to add the yellow, or you can pick a really bright purple. So just something that's going to have a nice contrast to your darker color. And you don't have to do black either. You can use like a bright pink and a really deep purple if you want. But the idea is just to get 2 really contrasting colors. Okay, so I'm just going to get a lot of yellow here. And mix it in with that orange just to brighten it up a bit, like I said. Like so. I just want a fair amount because we're going to be using a fair amount. Okay, so now I've got my bright color, and I'm just going to start with a little bit of a wash, kind of a medium wash. So the other element that we need to keep in mind, the other factor that's going to make this kind of pop, is the crop. So we're going to be doing 2 flower heads, but not inside the frame. We're going to have them go outside the crop, and that's what's going to provide a little extra interest in this abstract floral. So let's just, like I say, get that medium wash down and just do some rough, really rough petal shapes, but very loose and abstract, okay? And we're going to bleed them off that border, like so. So just pretend you're painting these beyond the boundaries of your paper, and you can just do light petals. So medium wash, and then I'm just dipping my brush in my water just to water it down to get lighter tones, just like so. Okay, leave some white space. You're just kind of going really loose with these. Now I'm going to let that kind of calm down and dry a little bit, and we'll go and we'll do the same thing, and we're going to do this down in this corner. Okay, so again, just kind of crazy, loose, abstract petals. And again, make sure they go off the page, outside of your crop. You can tap a little bit of darker pigment in there if you want while it's still wet, but I want it to calm down a little bit, so when we go back and we get kind of separate layers, if that makes sense. Just like that. And while that's kind of drying a bit, I am going to go in, just going to smooth some of these out just a little bit. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go in with my number 6 brush, and I'm going to start to introduce some black. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of black, and I'm just going to tap it off on my paper towel a bit. I don't want a whole bunch on there, and I'm just going to start to maybe outline some of these petals, just really roughly. Some of it's going to bleed in. Then I'm going to rinse off my brush, and I'm going to drag some of this out just so we've got a little bit of color. Well, not so much color, but a little bit of tone in the background. So I'm just wetting my brush and going in and hitting that black a little bit just to drag it out into the background. Like that. I think I'll go back to my number 12. Just make sure there's not a whole lot of water on there. Grab a tiny little bit of that black. The number 6 wasn't holding quite as much black as I wanted. And I'm going to rinse it off. And I'm just dragging my brush across the lip of my jar a couple times, and I'm going to start to drag that out just to get some tone in the background, like I was saying. Just like that. You could even take a little bit of that orange, just pop some of that into the background. Very light wash of it. I don't want to fill the background, just want to have some tone in there. And just kind of smooth it around a bit. Now, before we go in with the second layer, I want that orange, the first orange layer, to be a little dry. And right now it's quite wet, so I'm going to let it sit for just a little bit. Okay, so it's still quite damp, but not sopping wet. It's cool to the touch. And I'm going to go in with the orange again, make sure all the black's off my size 12 brush. I'm going to go into the orange, full pigment this time, and I'm going to tap some in the middle, just like so. Just randomly, I'm not really thinking about it. Okay. Then I'm going to rinse and dry off my brush, and I'm just going to drag some of it out. So what I want here is some harsh edges, some soft edges. Okay, so you're kind of getting a separate layer there, like glazing. It's not actually fully bleeding in, which is what I want. And I'm just going to keep dragging some of it out, just so it gets, you know, some glazing layers on there. This just adds a little bit of texture and interest. Okay, just like that. We'll do the same thing down to this sky. Not thinking about it too much. Okay, so I am cleaning my brush off every so often, but I'm not bringing in a whole ton of water, okay? I'm tapping my brush off on my paper towel every time I go into the water, okay? So now what I want to do is grab a whole bunch of that pigment again, tap it towards the middle. And I'm going to take the back side of my brush, but I'm going to switch to my number 6 brush because the end of this one is way too wide, way too fat to do what I want to do. So I'm going to take the back end of the brush and just start dragging my brush handle through. See that? Just to get some more textured lines. See how just dragging those through just adds a little bit of something, a little bit of interest to your flowers, just like that. And we'll go and do the same thing to this guy down here. So a lot of pigment. Again, tap towards the center. I'm saying to the center, but you can come out as far as you want. Okay, so again, not too much water. Take the back end of your brush and just drag the handle through. You can do as much of this as you want. And I think it's getting a little too saturated here. So I'm going to clean off my size 12 brush. And I'm just going to wet that a bit and just tap some of that up. It was a little too dark in that one spot. I'm going to mix it a little more here. And I'm just going to tap some right there. And again, just drag the handle of the brush through. I've got quite a lot of paint on there, but it's abstract, so anything goes. What I don't like is that this petal and this petal that's not grammatically correct. This petal and this petal aren't completely going off the page. So I do want it to definitely run off the edge of the page. So I'm gonna, whoops, that was way too much water, guys. Just tap some of that up. There we go. And it's okay that I'm getting layers there. That just adds more interest to it. Okay, so you can still drag some out to get some more kind of layers, just like that. I'm going to pop a little bit more in the center here. So the centers are wet now. I'm actually going to drag a little bit of this out, just like that. I don't want to cover all those light areas because it's that kind of contrast that keeps the interest in this. But I'm going to switch to my number 6 brush now. And now we're going to pop in some high contrast with some black, okay? So I'm going to get my black. And again, I'm just going to put a little bit around the edges of some of the petals, just to give it that pop. And if you think you've put down too much, it's okay, like I have here. I'm just going to go tap some of it up. And now I want to just tap some in the middle. And it's going to bleed because the centers are wet. And just tap. And while that black is wet, I'm going to do the same thing with the back end of my brush. And just drag some lines out. I hope my hand's not in the way and you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And if you were to do this with a brush, it'd be kind of hard to make sure you're not dragging out too much. I just find the handle of the brush just pulls the paint out and it's not going to bleed too much. That's why I like this technique. And if after it dries you find your black fading a little bit, you can always just go in and tap in a little bit more. You can even drag some out just to get the shapes of the petals defined a little more. But it is abstract, so we're not really trying to do perfect flowers here. Like, I don't know if I like that. I'm gonna mop some of that up. Now I'm just gonna refine some of the edges a bit with some orange because I find that I'm losing some of it, but I'm not going to go in with a really big brush. And I'm just going to tap a line down here. I think that ought to do it. And I'm going to rinse and dry off my brush a bit and just kind of fade that out, soften it up a bit, drag it off the end of the sheet, and I think I would like just a little bit more coming up from this petal here. But I don't want to lose that contrast, so I'm just going in with a little bit of water on my brush and just pulling that out a bit. I also think I could use a little bit of black coming out further into the flower, so I'm just going to take my number 6, just tap it on my paper towel so it's still damp, and I'm just going to coax some of this black out. While it's still wet. Okay, just to give it a little bit more contrast on some of these petals. Just like so. Try not to overwork it. I have to be very cautious here that I don't get too carried away. I want this black to come out just a little more. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, because if I do any more, I think I'm going to overwork it. No, I lied. I'm going to go back in because I'm going to risk overworking this. And I'm just going to bring this black down a little bit, because I found that this petal was just, it almost looks like it only has 3 petals because you can only see 3. So I'm going to put some black in there, and then I'm going to go back in with my orange and fill this hole in. I just didn't like how it was really not coming off the edge of the paper, which is what I want it to do. Okay, so it kind of looks like another petal in there. And maybe use a bit of orange out here too, just like that. And maybe some here. I'm just kind of going by eye, just trying to balance it out a bit, so it's not so contrived. Now you can go back in, and I think I will, just to keep it a little more abstract, go in with some orange Go back and get some of that yellow too, so it's nice and bright. Like so. And I'm going to try some splatters just to see. Okay, so I'm just going to put a few splatters in there. I don't want to get too carried away. And if it's landed in spots on your flower that you don't really want, I'm just going to tap those up. Now I think I want to put a few black splatters in there, not too many. The black can start to make things just start to look a little too heavy. Okay, and I'm just going to put just a few black splatters in. And while I've got the black on my brush, I'm going to go in, tap a little bit more into this guy because I feel like it's just a little flat. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it at that. And although we didn't cover the whole sheet with paint and water, we used a fair amount of water in each flower, and I can see it going kind of wavy. So I'm going to let this completely dry. Okay, so I think this is dry enough now, and I'm just going to take the tape off, and we can see what changing the crop can do for a really fun abstract floral. So there you go. There is our cropped in abstract floral, and you can see it has quite a bit of impact and interest just with the texture and the contrast between your bright color and your black, or whichever color you want to use. Like I said, use a bright pink and a really deep purple for the contrast and color. As long as you've got that contrast, and as long as you've got this you know, layering and texture in there, that's going to provide interest. Then the real big wow factor is just cropping it in and having your flowers go off the crop, outside the crop. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and that you found it helpful. And if you do give this a try and you're on Instagram, like I say, as always, please be sure to share and tag me so I can have a look. That's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.